Well, I grew up in Ohio, so up there, you cut that grass and make that cash during the summer, and then you plow that snow and make that dough during the winter.
Welcome to Jobber's Masters of Home Service podcast, where successful business owners share their secrets for making your business more profitable and efficient. I'm your host, Adam Sylvester, owner of Charlottesville Lawn Care and Charlottesville Gutter Pros for the last 15 years. I truly believe that service entrepreneurs need to come together from different service industries and swap stories, share tips, and learn from each other. By getting together and sharing each other's successes and failures, we can help each other level up. And that's the mission of Masters of Home Service. On today's episode, we're talking about running multiple businesses. I have Paul Jamison, successful business owner and host of the Green Industry podcast from Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome to the show.
What's up?
So we both run multiple businesses. So we both have experienced the highs and lows. Let's jump into what drives an entrepreneur to start another business? What's the benefit behind it? What do you think?
It's common that most people that are a small business owner are serial entrepreneurs because once you figure it out and turn a profit, it's exhilarating, and then your brain just thinks, I could start this business. I could do that business. Launching
the second one on the shoulders of the first is so much easier. You have the client list, you have the reputation, you've made all the mistakes. I remember starting my second business and thinking, this is a lot easier than the first time.
Yeah. And I just don't have enough time because for a long time, I wanted to start a sod company in Atlanta. I had, the sod father. I had the whole name, the whole thing. It's just, I just don't have enough time, but it's like, you can niche down and just crush it.
There's a lot of different ways we could do it. We could start a completely different business that's completely unrelated, no complementary services whatsoever, or there can be a lot of overlap, like power washing and window cleaning, that kind of thing. In your case, it was lawn care and sod. What have you seen that works? What have you seen what's going on?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Ohio, so up there, you cut that grass and make that cash during the summer, and then you plow that snow and make that dough during the winter. And so it just makes sense because you have a lot of cross-pollination over the same customers and a lot of the same vehicles. You can swap out certain attachments and things of that nature and actually use the Toro Multiforce, for example. It can be a mower in the summer. It can be a snow
plow
in
the winter.
It
can do leaves in the fall. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that makes sense in Ohio to go, lawn care to snow removal. It does not make sense south of the transitional zone, so it'd be foolish to do it down where we live. But pressure washing, for example, a customer that needs their grass cut, over time, that driveway is going to be looking raggedy. And so just taking a pressure washer, a surface cleaner, and cleaning up their driveway, it's a no-brainer. The question just is, at what point do you bite off more than you can chew? Just because you can offer these services doesn't mean you should.
100%, yeah. When shouldn't we start a new business? What are some of the things that we need to make sure that are secured before we go get distracted by something else?
Yeah, well, you want the foundation in your first business to be legitimate, that you're turning a profit, that you know what you're doing, because if that's a mess and you just go start a new mess, having multiple businesses isn't going to make any sense. But if you have a succession plan for the first business, the right leadership to move on, you just want to make sure that there's a smart plan for business A before you get moving into business B. And for a lot of us, having a singular focus is wisest. So you don't want to stretch yourself thin just because you can. So
yeah, I think it's worth mentioning that having one is fine, right? Having one business is great, but sometimes we get an itch, and it's appropriate if your first business is running smoothly. You've got the right people running the right systems, and you're delivering a consistent result every day. Hey, let's go start a new business. I think also seasonality plays a part in a lot of businesses. If you're a lawn care company in the Northeast, and it makes sense to do Christmas lights in the winter, something like that. If you're an HVAC company and most of your business is done in 4 months in the heat of the summer, you may need to find something else to supplement in the cold season.
It's like the first movers often really capitalize. So something that was really popular in Atlanta a few years ago was AstroTurf. And so I know in Arizona and stuff, that's been popular for a long time, but all of a sudden my customers started asking me, I started paying attention to the trend. Hey, do you do, it's basically fake grass, but they put a layer underneath it like you're doing a stone patio paver job. And they put this AstroTurf on top. And I had a friend that started doing a couple of them. And then next thing you know, he went all in on it and he's making absolute bank. So I think if you notice a trend and you have the experience of running a business, go for it.
Yeah. And a lot of times our clients will tell us. So they'll say, hey, well, do you do this and that? Well, no. And if you hear that enough, it's like ding, ding, ding. Maybe it's time, as long as you had the right things in place.
Yeah, and I ain't going on the ladder. So I heard that a lot. You clean gutters. And I actually did one time for this guy, and I was so scared of heights. Climbing up there, man, forget it. And I didn't know what I was doing, so I only charged him $225. And if you would have seen this house, that wasn't the right price. So I'm up on that ladder. It was butt chilly cold, and I'm like afraid of heights, so never again. So
Yeah.
kudos to you.
Let's help our listeners get a better feel for concrete things, financials. How do we keep things separate? How do we make sure that it's actually two separate businesses and not just a bunch of services under one company? Different employees, different locations, different vans, different brands, different websites. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I have two thoughts, and the one is the legal aspect. You want to make sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's, and there's so many variables of that. Virginia is different than Georgia, Florida is different than California, and United States is different than Australia and Canada. So making sure that your businesses are compliant with the law, of course, but honestly, from a financial perspective, you need to be able to measure success. You need to be able to evaluate what's going on, and if the waters are muddied, then one business might be booming and the other one sucks, but because it's all kind of muddied together, you're like, oh, things are going pretty well, when the reality is, no, this needs addressed.
It's just carrying the bad one. Yeah.
Keeping them separate from a financial perspective, I think, is important. And of course, I already mentioned you want to be compliant anyway. So I would suggest keeping them separate.
Yeah. When my bookkeeper does our financials every month, she logs into two different QuickBooks, two different bank accounts. It's all completely separate. That's one of the most common questions I actually get. Do your lawn care guys, your gutter guys, they ever switch? No. They don't even know each other. Like, they're separate. They're two different companies. And that way you can confidently tell a client, look, our guys are trained. They're specialized. They're not just jack of all trades. They know gutters and they know grass. But they don't know both. One, separate. And I think that goes a long way, because a client wants a specialized, trained professional, and not just, oh yeah, we do all this stuff. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, totally.
In terms of tax prep and making sure that all your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed, explain that more.
Yeah, you need someone smarter than you to oversee that. I would recommend having a very reputable, quality bookkeeper. Not all bookkeepers are equal.
Right.
So making sure that they have good reviews and they're trustworthy, and have them evaluate how your business is performing, because the numbers tell a story. And if everything is accurately going into the right business checking account for the right business, then the bookkeeper can look at that story and see how things are really going. And then you can make the adjustments from there. So I think that's super important, to have a really high quality bookkeeper paying attention, making sure that the proper taxes are set aside in a tax savings account. So when your quarterly estimates are due, or whatever country you're from, your taxes are due, you have the money saved and you're current with that. And that the bookkeeper can kind of pay attention to, what's really going on from a numbers perspective, to make sure everything is healthy, because it ebbs and flows. And at some points you might need to be putting a little bit more attention and focus on this business, on other times on this business. And if you have somebody who's paying attention to the stories the numbers are telling, they can kind of guide that and say, hey, this looks like a little bit of a red flag, Paul. What's going on here? It's like, oh, yeah, we need to address that. So
I love the perspective my bookkeeper has, because she's not around she lives in a different city, different state. She has no idea what it's like. And so when she points something out, in my mind, in my heart, I could justify, but she's looking at just the number, and the numbers don't lie.
Yeah, my bookkeeper's out of state too, and basically is like, what is this? And I justify it, but from their perspective, you're wasting money. That's bleeding money. Let's clean that up.
Now, there are listeners, I know because I was one of them, who say, I can't afford all that bookkeeper stuff, all the I can't afford all that. And what I would say to them, and this is really me just speaking from my heart, I was way late to the party on this. Years went by. I was doing my own books, thought I was crushing it, thought I was doing it perfectly. And then I discovered the really hard way that I wasn't doing it. I wasn't even close. Like I thought I was playing baseball, I was playing soccer. It wasn't even close. And so I actually end up paying a bookkeeper literally thousands of dollars to fix my books for like 3 years because I was so arrogant and thought I knew everything. And so I would encourage people, spend $800 over the 3 years and not $2,000 fixing it. Please get one now. It's not that expensive and it's worth every penny.
I literally made the same mistake when I started working with Megan and Joey. They had to go back and clean up messes from before, and it was definitely a lot of money. I heard some advice. I'm going to call it bad advice. They said, don't get a bookkeeper until you're at 100,000 revenue. I heard this my first year. So I was thinking, okay, I'm not going to get a bookkeeper right now. I'm going to wait till I hit 100,000 revenue. And then I hit 100,000 revenue, but I was just justifying,
going.
and I got got it going and everything. And so I would go back and say, you need a bookkeeper right out of the gate, and you need to pay yourself a set salary. Like if you're going to go get a job working wherever, you need to get those two things as fast as you can, because that's going to lay the proper foundation when you go out and quote a gutter cleaning job or a pressure washing job or a lawn care job. When you know I got to pay my bookkeeper, $240 a month or $350 a month or $400 a month. I got to pay myself $5 or $6K a month. I got all this stuff, and you have that foundation in place. When you go to quote a job year one, your shoulders are going to be back, your chest is going to be out, and you're going to know, I got all this stuff I got to pay. Mrs. Smith, this is the price. Oh my gosh, Paul, Johnny can do it for this. Well, that's our price. And there's a poise and a confidence. You can look a customer in the eye and know that that's a fair price, because you have to pay the bookkeeper. You have to pay yourself. You have to, run your business. And so I can't emphasize enough. I remember, I'm actually friends with the person that said that advice about wait until you get to 100,000. I would say no, sell something, sell your boat, do something to come up with the money to start every business you have with a good foundation of having a bookkeeper and paying yourself the salary that you're worth as a labor in your business.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's take a 30-second break, and then we'll come right back.
We are always driving around. We are a family HVAC business, and we are always in the field. We can't get to an office or a desk a lot of the times. With Jobber, I can quote, invoice, and get paid all on my phone. Access my customer information, job information, and my whole business right on my phone, right at the job site. That just makes running my business a lot smoother.
Smoother from start to finish. Quote, schedule, invoice, and get paid. Start your free trial today at jobber.com.
Paul, we both know, and a lot of our listeners know, that a good mindset to have is getting your business ready to sell. Even if you never want to sell it, that is a really good recipe to follow. Is what would it take to... So tell us more about what your approach with that is.
Yeah, and people get really sensitive when you start talking about this because their business is their baby.
That's true.
Paul, I would never sell my business. This is my calling in life. Right. And then basically it's like, well, eventually you're going to be 80 or 90 and you're going to be out of here. And what if your children aren't as passionate about that as you are, and they sell it? Don't you want to set it up for them to be successful when they sell it? And that's by having that proper foundation. So I think with every business, you're like, okay, if somebody buys this one day, how do I present it to be top dollar? So as you're building your business day to day, what we're thinking about is, how do I get more efficient? How do I serve my customer? And we're so in the day to day and just like putting out fires by lunchtime that we're not thinking one day one of these big boys companies might want to buy my business. Is it organized in a way they're going to offer me top dollar?
I look at making your business ready for sale as just another way of saying business doesn't really need me. It's like the metaphor I use is having a lion by its tail. A lot of our listeners feel like they have a lion by its tail. This business kind of whips them around. They don't have a whole lot of control over it. It just kind of goes. But if they let go, it's going to devour them. Building the business to be sold really is like having a lion going out and hunting for you. And it comes in when you call it, and it goes out when you send it. That's what you want from a business is control and freedom. And so if someone's offended by, I'm not going to sell my business, fine, don't sell it. Just make it a healthy thing for you, so it doesn't dominate your life, and so it actually produces what you want instead of feeling it's out of control.
And it makes it a lot easier when you do transition and pivot. And on my podcast, I've interviewed so many people that have transitioned. One of our friends, jobber friends, Mitchell Gordy, I think you met him in Vegas. He had a lawn mowing business. Mitchell's Lawn Care. Then he's like, got a tractor. He's like, I like being out on my Kubota tractor.
Yes.
And he changed his business to Mythco, let go of the lawn mowing companies, and now he's out doing jobs with this Kubota tractor and his attachments. And so it's like, but his business was very organized and squeaky clean and easy to make a pivot and an adjustment.
So that's a good segue. Once you have two businesses, life can get pretty tricky, pretty busy, if you will. And, we discussed on an earlier episode that work will expand to as much time as you give it, right? And just like gas will fill a room. And so how have you juggled the demands of two businesses and your life? How have you done all that?
Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah.
It's difficult because I don't have a off button or like a off switch. So I'm constantly thinking, like even this morning I was talking to my buddy Brett down in Florida about an opportunity that we're both like, this is it, man. It's like, let's double down. Let's go all in on this. And it's like, I kind of had to think through. I'm like, wait a minute. I got to still take care of these customers and take care of this. And I think it can be so easy because I want to say I'm a people pleaser in a bad way, but I always want my customers to be happy. So there's always something I can be doing to serve someone. And I don't know how to shut that off. And so we talked on, I think it was episode 1, that basically what I found is I have to literally schedule a day off. And it used to be Sundays, and now it's been Saturdays, and whatever it is. That could be a Monday. It doesn't matter what day. But it's like, this day, I'm going to rest. I'm going to recover. For me, it's actually having that day, and I'm going to be honest, I'm like 50%.
We're still learning.
Yeah,
right?
like I get sucked in. I'm like, all right, I'm taking the day off, blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, I'm like, because I love business. Some people are passionate. Like LeBron likes to play basketball, and he happens to make bank doing it. It's like, I love business. You love business. And if you're listening to this podcast, you love business. And that's okay. But what's the point if the people that are family and our friends, if we don't have healthy relationships with them, there's no dollar amount that makes it worth it if you're not cultivating those relationships and taking care of your body and health.
Yeah. I know a lot of the listeners have kids and spouses, and they have a lot of demands outside of work on top of work. And I just know that having a business is totally doable with all that stuff. And having two businesses is totally doable. You have to make hard choices sometimes. Like with this new opportunity, what am I going to have to give up in order to do this new opportunity? Is it worth it? If it's worth it, do it. If it's not, don't do it. And so from my perspective as a dad and as a husband, I have to make those choices all the time. Is this worth it? If I'm tempted to keep my phone on after hours, past the time that I've committed to having it off, and I turn on, if it rings, is it going to be worth answering when my kids are right there and it's dinner time? Like that's a decision we have to make as business owners, especially if you have more than one business. And so I would encourage our listeners that it's doable as long as you put the proper limitations on yourself to make sure you don't burn out and lose what you love so much.
And the other thing about having mentors, in the multitude of counsel, there's wisdom. And so I have a man in my life, he's about approaching 60, and he's a lot smarter than me. He's a lot wiser than me. So when I get gung-ho about a fresh new opportunity, I'll call him. His name's Brian, and I'll say, Brian, shoot me straight. Here's what I'm thinking. And sometimes he'll say, have you thought about this? Have you considered this? And he'll say things, and then, sometimes I'll be like, you're being too hasty, Paul. Like, go take a cold shower. And other times, I'm like, well, sounds like a green light to me, but just be careful about this or cautious about this. And so I think finding that somebody who's further along in life than you in business and in maturity and wisdom, and running these ideas by them, because there's things that I've done that have absolutely flopped, and I was all gung-ho about it. I keep going back to like, you got to take care of your customers too, because once you get that entrepreneurial bug and you become that serial entrepreneur, there's always the flashy new best opportunity. And if you don't, I think they say dance with the girl who brought you or whatnot. Like, you got to make sure you're taking care of your current customers. So when you go to the new next thing, it's not like you burn a bridge or you neglected somebody to go do something else. So
yeah, I totally agree with that. There's a time that an entrepreneur goes from working in the business to working on the business, and the product goes from lawn care to the business itself. And I think the mindset shift is what allows you to become an owner of the second business. Is once the product that you're focused on is actually the business itself, then I think you're ready to make the jump. But if you're still focused on the product that your employees are producing for your customers, it's going to be hard to make that jump. But if you do have that mindset, okay, the business is the product, and I'm focused on making the business better every day, then you're going to have a lot more success working on the next business because you're not focused on the product over here of the original one. Paul, this is a great conversation. I'm going to try to summarize it here with 3 takeaways that I wrote down. Number 1, I think you have to work on the business, not in the business, in order to be ready to take the next step in a second business. Number 2 is you can look at like trends and what other opportunities there are, like seasonal businesses and complementary businesses that might be able to use the same employees for both. And then number 3 was more of a lifestyle, like making sure that you stay healthy and that you set aside time for certain things and just being aware that there's more to life than business. Paul, that's great. Thanks for the conversation.
Good chatting with you.
How can people find out more about you?
I have a podcast, the Green Industry Podcast, and that is everywhere you listen to podcasts. I'm also on Instagram. And then I have a brand new book that just came out, The Lawn Care Advantage, and you can pick that up on Amazon.
If you like this episode, make sure you rate it and follow us and visit jobber.com/podcast.